Hello, everyone, and good morning, and welcome to another author spotlight interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I'm your host, Gabriel Garcia. Many of you know me as the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill. And joining us today is a guest I am super excited to have here on the show. Now, our guest today is a small-town Canadian indie author and poet trying to make her name in the writing world one word at a time. She refuses to be restricted to one genre with her long list of works in progress days across multiple genres. She has one body of work currently published, which is her poetry, and she's currently working on a children's book series and a 4-book general fiction series. So, without further ado, everybody, let's give a huge round of applause to our guest today, Lunca Schadeck. Luna, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. So, Luna, before we dive into our little teasers for today, what's a little random fact about you that not a lot of people may know about?
Oh, that is a good one. I would say something that not a lot of people know is I never intended to do poetry, and that is actually my first published work.
Really?
Yeah.
So, what kind of poetry would you say you typically write or you're drawn to?
I would say I'm very free verse poetry, so not like your typical rhyming poetry. And then just like most poetry is, but mine is very emotionally driven. So I lean more towards like the darker, more realistic side of mental health in my poetry collection versus a lot of people I think want like happy poetry. That is not what you're going to get from me, at least not from this book, maybe in future works. But yeah.
Ooh, alrighty. And now, in regards to your works in progress, I know you're still working on them, and the ideas could definitely change as the process goes on with the editing and the rewriting. But generally speaking, what can you give us as like an overall main idea for your children's book series, as well as your general fiction series?
So for the children's book series, it is kind of taken inspiration from my own kids. So this is something that we're planning. This is why it's so on the back burner, because we kind of want it to be a family project. So my husband wants to do the illustration. He is not an illustrator, so he's learning one step at a time. And then my kids also want to be involved in the story progress and the plot. So with that, we're planning the series to be called The Adventures of Noah Bear and Finley Raccoon. Those are my boys' names. So yeah. So that is really all the kids series is, and they're all planned to be standalone books. So it'll be just about learning lessons that are keep kids engaged and are good for the kids to learn, but are also something that draw the parents in of, okay, maybe I don't know how to teach this, but my kid really likes books, and hopefully this can kind of help. Just kind of an easier way, a broader way to teach difficult topics. In some cases, not all are difficult, like some are just happy, cute little adventure stories. So yeah. And then with my 4-book series, it is what we are kind of calling a psychological warfare, because I don't know how to genre it. And what that one is basically what we're going to call the female main character. However, there is a little bit of a plot twist to calling her a main character. She is so plagued by trauma that her subconscious doesn't really know how to cope with it until she meets some, let's call them familiar strangers.
Ooh, okay.
And she ends up in this world with trying to decide if she has to save herself or if she has to trust strangers, but she has a long history of trust issues. And then she actually ends up quite rapidly, is the plan, if I can write this correctly, is she is kind of sidelined in her own story. Ooh. Which the point of that was to be, she is so plagued by this psychological struggle that she becomes like a back character to her own story, because she is so consumed by what is happening to her. So, yeah.
Nice. All right. I like that.
Yeah.
And correct if I'm wrong, it was definitely before off camera, but did you also say that your children's series may be also inspired by like works of like Franklin, if I'm not
Yeah.
mistaken?
Yeah. So it would be similar to Franklin in the sense of they're going to be like standalone adventure stories where it's a children's series without being like a consecutive, like how series are typically you have to read this, then this, then this. So more alike to Franklin in the sense that they are all standalones.
Nice. And if anyone remembers Franklin and knows that we're talking about, I mean, that was a blast
Yes.
from the past. Franklin and of course Little Bear was another great
Yes.
kids show, which honestly they don't make those anymore. They absolutely do not make those anymore. And there was something very calming about those shows, which definitely it definitely shows like a difference between the shows now geared for kids and the ones even I remember growing up when I was in like elementary school. I have a lot of good memories with those shows.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm very fortunate where I have my kids are okay watching the older shows. Of course, they like the shows now, but I can't. Other than Bluey, I appreciate Bluey, but all other kids shows, I'm like, this. I need the nostalgia of my own childhood, so I'm going to write it.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
So this also may be kind of going into spoiler territory, but between your 4-book series and your children's book series, who is your favorite character so far, and what makes him so special?
Ooh. From the children's book series, I honestly cannot pick a favorite character because they're based on my own personal life. So that would be to me like picking a favorite child, and I can't do that. And for the psychological warfare, I would say probably Nix is my favorite character, and he is our blue-haired, tatted up biker boy. So he has very much the bad boy vibe, but he is an absolute softie. He just doesn't want people to know that. So yeah, he's one of those. He's been compared to as a burnt cinnamon roll by the couple people that kind of have an inside peek at the story so far. So he's definitely one of my favorites. He's you have to speak fluent sarcasm or you can't be his friend. So yeah, and then with the children's series, I would say it's hard because where the names kind of came from is Noah Bear is just like new parent sleep deprivation. We made a song that was just saying Noah Bear in a sing-song voice when he was like 2 days old. And then with Finley Raccoon, Noah actually has a picture in his room that is a raccoon on the moon. And Finley would always say, "Coon, down." And I say, well, he can't get down. And then Finley would laugh like a seagull. I promise it's more endearing than it sounds. But yeah, so that's kind of where that came from. And which Noah now wants to change it to Finley Fox, but I'm dead set on Finley Raccoon. So yeah.
Awesome. I like that. Absolutely like that. And I know you kind of already mentioned this already for your children's book that you already have like an age group in mind. But for your psychological warfare 4-book series, do you have an idea of like the age group for that?
I don't really. I would say like young adult or like people that are okay with like it not being a spice novel series. Like it's not going to be like, not that there is anything wrong with spice scenes. I'm just not currently in that writing phase. So I would say it's a little hard because it's very kind of similar in ways to my poetry book, which I would not recommend for anyone under like maybe 16 to 18. I just wouldn't because of the subject matter. But then the way that I am writing the psychological warfare, I could see like young teens to young adults really enjoying it. So I don't really know the age range for that one yet.
All right, all right. And this actually kind of goes into something earlier mentioned in your bio, how you are the type of author that does not want to be confined to just one genre or one style of writing. You are what we would call like a multi-genre author. You write
Yeah.
for, adults, you write poetry, also write for kids as well. So what has probably been the most fun and yet challenging aspect of being a multi-genre author, because the writing is going to be, significantly different between all of your bodies of work?
Yes, I would say the most challenging, honestly, has been going from poetry writing to like a proper book kind of process of writing. Just within the group chats that I'm in and stuff, they always talk about like, oh, editing rounds this, editing rounds that. And I'm like, what do you guys mean rounds? Like, because with my poetry, there was very minimal. It would just be like punctuation corrections, and not really like full on edits. So now I'm kind of going, oh, I didn't realize this, but I kind of started on an easier genre being poetry, that there's not a whole lot that editor can come in and say like, you're doing this wrong because you can't tell me I'm feeling incorrectly. um, and then now going from that to having to be in a book, and with book one, and it'll probably continue throughout the series, there is a lot of time shifting. So there's a lot of flashbacks, and then we're kind of running into the struggle of, oh, but we want to reference certain aspects, but we already put the
Mm,
years, which this is such a minor thing, but like we already put the years in the chapters, and it's like, oh, now we have to actually kind of study and reference, would this have been a thing in 2014? Probably not. So now having to go back and either change just the years or change the whole plot, like with the psychological warfare, kind of how I'm styling it is she meets these people in a school setting. So she is still a teenager. But then I'm going, some people have said that it doesn't translate well, that these are teens, or some are just confused why some teens are tatted bikers and some are not. So that's kind of been the challenge of, okay, now I get why people say, like, how do you keep track of all the things? And especially as an ADHDer, it's like, I don't. I just chaos write, hope for the best, and fix it as I go. So that was kind of the most challenging. I think the most fun has been being able to explore the different genres and not
mm,
being so set on, okay, I started with poetry, I have to only write poetry, because
right.
to me there's no rules to what you're allowed to write if you're a writer. So
Very
yeah.
true. That's very, very true, Luna. And I definitely think it is kind of almost like a challenge, but a good one to see like where you're more comfortable with, and what can you do and what you can do in the future, but maybe a little bit more practice in. And I
Yes.
know some people have definitely said that being a multi-genre author, it can be a hit or a miss depending,
Yeah.
because readers will sometimes feel that you are not, what's the word I'm thinking of? Not consistent, but you are not like, you don't stick
Fully
to one.
committed.
Yes, that's the word. Fully
Yeah.
committed to one genre. You're like choosing between, the genres that are the most popular. And while there may be some truth to that, as authors, we shouldn't be confined to just one style of writing. I mean, yes, we have our preferences that we will always write first, but it doesn't hurt to experiment and explore our options. And on the topic of, exploration, I'm actually very curious. Now, obviously, for your kids' stories, there's going to be themes and lessons already presented in those books, because, it's geared towards children. There is going to be messages. But for your poetry and for your psychological series, what are the themes and lessons that hopefully you want your readers to take away from?
So with my psychological warfare series, I will just say basically it deals with, of course, based on kind of the little snippet I gave you, it deals with a lot of mental health. So the the first couple ones will kind of be dealing with like the bulk of, oh no, the weight of mental health, and I don't even realize that this is what's happening to me. And it does kind of then lead into, okay, I'm now ready to accept that this is what's going on. How do we kind of continue to live with it? Like, how do we make the most of life with mental health that you can't just always medicate away? So with that, that's kind of the takeaway with that is mental health exists, but that doesn't mean you have to not exist. It doesn't mean you have to be consumed entirely by, be it anxiety or post-traumatic stress, anything like that. So it's kind of just to dive into, like, yes, it's heavy, but these things don't have to consume you. You can actually, like, in some cases, work them to your benefit if you know how. And that is kind of what in later books we're going to kind of dive into, is we're going to have a hero character that teaches our female main character kind of things that I was taught. So one of the examples is a really good friend of mine who actually is like the main dedication for my poetry book. He told me one day that for every negative thing about yourself that you say, whether you think it, whether you say it audibly, whatever it is, whether you write it about yourself, you have to audibly say 3 things that are good about yourself. Even if the negative was only in your head, you have to audibly say at least 3 things that you genuinely like about yourself. So like that's going to be one of the lessons we learn in the series, is this is how we cope. This is how we rewrite our narrative. This is how we rewire our brain from thinking I'm not good enough to, like, oh, what are the things that are good about me? So that's with that. And then with the, with the poetry book, they're subsectioned and they're all echoes of, for the first, I believe there's 5 sections total. So for the first 4, it's echoes of love, life, and loss, echoes of betrayal. And then because the book itself is called Shattered Echoes. And then the final section is called Whispers of Hope. So it's meant to be, first of all, it's meant to be in that order of the dark is the bulk of it. And then Whispers is kind of like a quiet, it's a gentle. So it's just a gentle reminder to readers that, like, even though the bulk may seem very heavy, very dark, at the end of it, there is still light to be found. So that is kind of the lesson in that. And that's with the markets that I've done and with personal sales I've made. That's kind of what I tell people is Shattered Echoes was actually created after I lost my best friend to suicide. So that's what I mean. Like, I never intended to write poetry. It was just, I lost him and I was heavily pregnant at the time, and I would just sit in bed and write. And that's just kind of what came out. And I had no intention really of sharing it, but I do have a really close friend that is one of my most trusted friends. And I sent the piece into them, and they were the ones that said, okay, you need other people to see this. And Jordan, who's the one that I lost, he also encouraged me to, like, follow my dreams of writing. I've always dreamed of writing. So he had actually read parts of my writing that is not at all obviously the poetry. And he also had said, you need to publish this. You need people to hear your story. Like, it deserves to be seen. So then after losing him, having another friend kind of see my writing and say, okay, you need somebody to see this, kind of just felt like it clicked. It was a sign. And so then I just kind of went with it. So then, yeah, that's, I guess, kind of what I'm using as my lessons and my stories is, despite the bulk of heaviness, there's always something light in there. And then, of course, like you said, with the children's series, the same wouldn't necessarily apply because we're not writing dark, heavy things for children.
No.
So, yeah.
Well said, Luna, well said. And I am sorry for the loss of your friend. And
Thank you.
You're welcome. And they always just say that poetry, I've tried dabbling in poetry. It's not for me, but I can definitely see how poetry is arguably probably one of the most difficult forms of writing, because not your standard prose. That is truly writing based upon the experiences we have in our daily lives and the emotions that are attached to them. So I give my hat to anyone who writes poetry and who is a poet, because that is not an easy form of writing that takes many years to master. So again, I tip my hat to anyone who dabbles in that sphere of writing, because it is not easy. But just like writing a novel, writing poetry is still going to have the themes and the messages that we can learn from. I mean, that's why we study so many great poets now, because we can learn from their writing and hope to inspire the next generation, so to speak. And you kind of already answered this already in this question, but I want you to go a little bit deeper, Luna, into in your own personal experiences, if there is a specific moment in your life that may have been used for, inspiration, or may have inspired either a section in one of your works in progress, or even for your poetry. If something happened in your life that also may inspire a particular poem, so to speak.
I would say this kind of applies to both. What I haven't really told anyone, so everyone here, you get the inside scoop, is the series Work in Progress is kind of in like a loose way, a novel version of the poetry book is kind of how I'm doing
Okay.
this. So both are kind of loosely based, not so much the poetry is not loosely, but both are kind of based on my own personal experiences. So with that, as far as poetry, there's a lot in there that are just like, I mean, everything in there is personal experience.
Right.
So there's some where it's from when I was 8. There's things from when I was 13, things from when I was 28. So there's just, in the poetry, everything in there is based on personal experience. Initially, for a while, I was kind of hesitant to share it because I was like, it was something that my friend actually sent me recently. It's the struggles of an author, is the thought of, oh no, somebody might read this,
Right.
versus like, oh, somebody might read this. So that was very much a struggle, especially when it was first published and like, okay, now it's out there, everyone can read it, whoever wants. I no longer can stop somebody from consuming my work. So that was hard in the sense of like, okay, but all of these are very personal, and if, let's say, the right or wrong, depending on how you want to view it, person were to pick it up, they might be able to connect like, oh wait, this is about me. And that initially made me very nervous because it isn't positive things about them. But then like my brain kind of decided to go with like the mindset of, well, if the shoe fits, like I didn't name names in the pieces. If you think it's about you, that says more about you than it does about me. And so initially I was very nervous about it getting into the wrong hands, but then it was kind of just with the help of my in-laws, actually, because they are very wonderful, very supportive. They kind of just helped to remind me that, okay, yeah, these might be about these people in your life. And if they see it, that might hurt them. But also these are your truths, and like they deserve a place to be seen and heard. And which that kind of clicked for me too, because a lot of the work is to, like, the whole point of my poetry is so that if somebody is going through similar, they can look at it and go, okay, I feel seen, I feel heard, I feel validated, I'm not alone in what I'm facing. So that was kind of like, okay, I need to remember to take my own advice. Like if you've seen the meme of like me listening to my own advice and it's Arthur and he's wearing headphones, but like his ears are up here, the headphones are down here. So I'm like, okay, yeah, like I need to really listen to myself. So with poetry, yeah, they are all personal experiences. And then with the psychological warfare, I will say it is kind of personal experience, but I'm writing it in a way that hopefully the readers are like, oh wow, I didn't expect that. So yeah.
Nice. Now, I think you've already answered this in the beginning earlier, but I'm actually going to combine it with the next question. This is going to be focusing more on your children's series. What has probably been the biggest challenge of not only just writing, a kid series, but also creating the illustrations with the children's series? And ultimately, when writing that, how do you know which segments of the book are going to make younger readers giggle or feel excited? Because it's one thing to write a children's book that doesn't have any illustration. It's another thing else entirely to write characters, or rather draw characters in your style that's unique to the book, that feels authentic and not trying to be either an homage to a previous work or previous style of drawing or certain characters. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
So for the children's book, kind of the way that I'm gonna hopefully make young readers giggle is I am really just using, like, again, personal experiences, or my oldest is almost 4.5. So he's kind of helping, and like he's very, I want to read all the time. I want to be read to. So like that's very nice. Same with the younger. He's just younger, so he doesn't have as much say yet. And with this one, it is kind of hard because where I struggle is, again, my husband wants to do the illustrations. He is not an illustrator, so he's just like messing around on his iPad and stuff. But what the struggle with that is, he of course wants to better his skills, but then there's also the time restraint of like, I want to get these out when my kids are an age that they'd appreciate the books too, instead of like, oh, this is a book about you, but now you're 16. So yeah, with that, it is kind of like the struggle of, I have a way that I envision the illustrations, but I also don't want to like impede on somebody else's creative freedom. And then, yeah, just like ways I'm going to engage the kids is kind of just involve my kids in like, what would be a book that you would want to be read to? Or like right now, my oldest is very in Mom, tell me a story that's silly and scary and funny and XYZ, like, and he thinks I'm just gonna like on the spot be able to be like, okay, once upon a time. And I'm always like, I don't know. Like, I need more time to process and think. And he's like, have you thought of one yet? Like every 2 seconds. And I'm like, how about you give me prompts and I will combine them into a story? So like that, I think it's going to be kind of the fun of when we get more actively into the children's book series, right, where I can say, okay, give me a prompt. What is something silly that you want to happen in this book? What is something maybe sad that you want to happen in this book, or scary? Or, okay, it gets scary, then what makes it not scary? So that's kind of with that one, how it's kind of going so far. And then, yeah, like I said, there will still be like emotions in it, like learning big feelings. And
right.
One that kind of I'm planning to do that kind of I'm hoping appeals to the parents is kind of a book where the parents are struggling to regulate their emotions and they maybe react poorly to the children, but then it's about the repair. So where there's rupture, there needs to be the repair. So, okay, well, maybe I got upset with my child for being a child, basically. And then it turns into, okay, whoa, let's take a breath. Like, this was not your fault. I'm sorry. And like really focusing on the learning. Sorry isn't just a word, and it isn't just something that is expected of kids. That sometimes parents mess up and apologies need to be had. And with that one, it kind of comes from like, I personally feel I did not have that growing up. So me trying to regulate and teach my children how to regulate when it wasn't taught to me has been quite a struggle at times. But of course, we're all learning. So that's kind of where the rupture happens, but it's about the repair. Where a lot of rupture happened in my childhood, but there was very little repair there. So like that's kind of like the big concept with these children's books, is kind of teaching these lessons to these kids, but also having it, if it's a parent that maybe didn't get these lessons, it's okay, I can learn with my child. Like, it's not too late for me to learn also. Like an example of that is I used to get very, like I still do, I get very frazzled, but at like very minor things. And now we're kind of doing workbooks, like kindergarten workbooks and stuff with my oldest. And a thing that I teach him when he's doing like tracing letters, I remind him like, okay, slow down, it's not a race. And like saying that enough times in the day, it kind of reminds me like, okay, mom, like slow down. It's okay. Like, not that it's not a race in this case, but like take a breath. If you're getting a little upset, a little elevated, like, okay, just slow down. And like kind of making that lesson a way, like finding a way to make that lesson something that can apply to parents as well, or general adults, because it doesn't mean just because it's a kid's book doesn't mean it has to be a parent to child read. So yeah.
Beautifully said, Luna, beautifully said. And to wrap up this incredible spotlight segment here on the channel, are there any sneak peeks that we can expect from you from these works in progress? Do we have at least a rough idea of when we should be seeing new updates on, you know, the process for these books, when they might be published or anything like that?
I don't have like an published, like any sort of publication timeline. However, that said, like, again, with some of the groups, I mean, I've been kind of playing around with like, how do we do like teasing a work in progress without being like, oh, hey, it's coming like in the immediate future. So with that, I actually for this month have been doing little sneak peeks where it'll just be kind of showing that, okay, there's more work coming, and it's not necessarily poetry. So I do have like a work in progress Wednesday segment that I am posting on my socials, and it'll kind of have where, okay, we started at like 4,000 words, and then at the end of it, we're 12,000 words. So like just to kind of show people that it is coming. It's slow, but it's coming. I probably will not tease the kids book on my current socials just because, again, it's such a far stretch from what I'm currently doing that like I don't want people to be looking for kids books and come to my socials and be like, oh, this is not kid friendly.
Right.
So with that, I probably would just do like a separate account for the kids content. But because that's so backburnered right now, I'm not like as worried about that. And then with other teasers, because so many authors have just raved about Canva, me and Canva are not friends. Maybe one day we will be enemies to lovers, but no, not right now. But I have been kind of playing around with that and just putting together kind of collage posts that I plan to share later in the month or in later months, where it just kind of gives you like a little peek at the characters. So we do have one for our character Cass, and it's just like a very simple picture of somebody wearing a suit with a bow tie, cinnamon rolls, and like whatever else. And that was kind of like a poke fun at Cass as our cinnamon roll character, even though he likes to think he's not. So yeah, there will be little teasers in that sense where I am still writing. I'm also going to start doing maybe like little quotes on some of the days where I just zero context, throw a quote out there to try to get people to be like, oh, I wonder kind of what we're doing here, or for them to kind of develop relationships with the characters before the characters are there.
Yes.
So yeah.
Nice, Luna. Nice.
Yeah.
And on that note, viewers and listeners, we conclude this incredible spotlight teaser interview here on Tales from the Wandering Scribe. I want to give a huge thank you to Luna for coming on the show, making her official debut. Now, Luna, where can people find you on social media if they wanted to reach out and connect as well as purchase a copy of your poetry?
So my poetry is actually available pretty much anywhere. Like you can go Kobo, Kindle, Amazon, Barnes and Noble. I do have a direct purchasing link through the publishing team that I used. So that is also on my link tree. My link tree is on both my social medias. So on Facebook, it is just Lunca Schadeck, LUNASCHADECK. And again, with Instagram, it is the same, luna.schadeck. And I will say, more active on Instagram just because there are things that I post on Instagram that don't actually allow me to crossover post. So if you are wanting more content from me, I do try to post daily as much as possible. So yeah, I would say Instagram would be the place to find me. Otherwise, Facebook and all the purchasable places for my poetry is on my link tree, which is also available in my bio of both Facebook and Instagram.
Nice. Very, very nice. I'll link all that down below in the description of this video, viewers and listeners. And again, thank you so much for joining us for another Spotlight interview here on the channel. A huge thank you to Luna for coming on the show. And down the road, if you would like to see Luna back on the show for a full-fledged author interview to talk more in depth about either her poetry, her psychological warfare series, or more about her children's book series, you know you have to do. Like this video, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, this has been the Wandering Scribe and the Wandering Quill, signing out. Wish you all a wonderful day wherever you are in the world. Happy Wednesday, everybody. We'll see you all in the next episode.